Welcome to another edition of MTG Decktech with Shawn. This week we are looking into the level 1 of the new standard metagame after rotation with the release of Guilds of Ravnica. If you followed my set review, I didn't enter the pre-release as a big believer in the mentor mechanic out of the Boros guild. It felt too easily interrupted and tempoed, and while after playing has swayed my opinion some, I still think the mechanic overall isn't exactly inspiring. However, I do see that coupled with strong synergistic pulls or selectively built decks through draft or constructed, it can prove to be a fast clock, and the initial Magic Online results make it seem the mono-red menace of before the rotation has faded to be replaced with a very guilds-heavy aggro deck. Let's take a look at how this deck aims to pressure players that are too greedy or unrefined for the early weeks of the format. To start, let's rip the band-aid and look at probably my least favorite card currently getting played in this list. It starts with 4 Goblin Banneret. This fills a needed role of a low CMC creature with threatening skills versus an empty or opposing board state that doesn't have good blocks. I'm not the biggest fan of this card as it has very poor stats. For an opposing creature to match up, it's easily traded or just blocked efficiently, but the flexibility this card offers is undeniable. Next, we get a far better body in the form of Boros Challenger. As a 2-mana 2/3 body, it's well ahead of its curve, and he also affords a nice post-settle or flooded out mana sink to gain the extra mentor, similar as Goblin Banneret. Now, both of these mentors are aimed at maximizing our last 2-drop creature with the Swiftblade Vindicator. Armed with a stack of imposing evergreen keywords, this little 2-drop threatens to end games swiftly, especially when combined with the other growth effects on the list. She represents free wins on the play against any greedy dirtle hands from the opponent. The list comes armed with a pair of 3-drops to continue turning the heat up on the opponent. The mini Rabble Master was initially hyped then dismissed for his Rabble comparisons, but when your deck has some removal and a flood of threats, this Warboss can truly push matches over the edges. The Mentor ability will have some benefit, but he also will frequently sit back and just churn out a rabid army of goblins. The captain of our aggro legion comes with Tajic Legion's Edge, the 3-power haste and mentor creature. These words typically equate to a massive hit on turn 3, and the added first strike helps push future mentor swings through. The additional effect of preventing non-combat damage really swings the red mirror matches, as well as stopping spot removal or value from opposing Goblin Chain Whirlers. For that last little bit of push, we were tasked with the question of which 4-drop, the recursive and annoying Phoenix, or the hammer with wings and synergy of Aurelia. The simple answer was to go with both, and we get 3 of each. Green is also showing up as a popular list while it's not necessarily going 5-0 repeatedly. These flyers make it a better matchup versus the green decks, and can single-handedly close games while also offering a lot of threat out of one creature. When you're able to resolve one of these flyers, it's really difficult for your opponent to answer, and you're able to either sit back with your board to play around Settle the Wreckage and pressure with the one creature, or pressure with the wide board state, and after they settle, this 4-drop can finish the game. The flying over top makes the opposing green matchups look fairly clunky because unless they have a fight effect, a lot of the large green creatures can't interact with these. The deck is full thrusters ahead and left with few spell slots. To start, we have Legion's Landing. It's easy to flip, and it helps grind out long games or gain that little bit of life needed in the mirror. But additionally, it will help us ramp into the Phoenix and the Legion General herself earlier. We get the expected set of lightning strikes to open paths for our Vindicators and Legion war bosses, or simply gain reach and last the long flexible games with integrity and intervention. The integrity effect allows us to pressure our creatures early and works really well with our Swift Blades, while the 4-mana War Leader's Helix is a good way to open up the path or act as a final reach of burn spells against fog opponents or messed up board states. The mana base is fairly simple. Because we're evenly divided in colors and we're not going to run the Goblin Chain Whirler in this list, we get 8 plains and 8 mountains. In addition to these 16 basics, we run the 4 Sacred Foundries. The only land that can possibly come in tapped are the 4 Clifftop Retreats. But with 20 lands that cause these to come into play untapped, you often are able to play your mana untapped as often as you would like. The sideboard is a reasonable sideboard shell for an unknown metagame. We get Justice Strike as spot removal for the large green creatures or mirror matches. This will help us push through the necessary damage. We also gain 2 copies of Citywide Bust, a 3-mana single-sided board wipe that will pretty effectively destroy most green opponents or large value-based opponents, and only really hits our Aurelia. We also get to run a Settle the Wreckage, which between Citywide Bust and Settle the Wreckage, in aggressive mirror matches, lets us have one-sided board wipes. For the aggressive and mid-range list, we also have the flexibility of 4 History of Benalia. This can fill up the board so we can slow an opposing threat down, or if our opponents stumble, History of Benalia can single-handedly crush the opponent. We also run 2 Lyra the Dawnbringer, which is good against mid-range opponents who board out a lot of their spot removal because our creatures are so much more efficient, and they're going to try to bring in board wipes or good creatures. And it also really helps against opposing aggro matches, as if they can't get it off the board, the First Strike and Lifelink really swings the matchups to our favor. Lastly, for the inevitable control matches, we want some form of card advantage, and get it with Vance's Blasting Cannon acting as its best Chandra impersonation. While it's great to flip the extra cards, it will give us a control match reach. Lastly, we have 2 Huatli Warrior Poet. This lets us chain out armies of 3/3s, and while it's unlikely that we'll be using her pluses or her minuses, she provides an inevitable threat of just constant 3/3s that your control opponents normally won't have the best answers for. So what do you think? Is the Boros Legion destined to reign over Standard until the next set releases, or will the Mentor mechanic be answered and tempoed into a positional player? How would you build a list? Would you make it more aggressive or stick to the more mid-range plan? Make sure to tune into our Twitch channel on Tuesdays to watch me stream some sweet lists, especially as we test the new Standard. And if you have any decks that you would like to see a Decktech on or streamed, let us know in the comments below. As always, make sure to give us a like or a follow on YouTube and Twitch to get the latest video content, and let us know what you want to see streamed, written about, or Decktech on Twitter, Facebook, or down below in the comments.